Hello and welcome to the public online discussion Enhancing Intercultural Integration organized by the Open Society Fund. Today we have a very exciting group of panelists here with us today. We have two national minority organizations representative from Norway and two organizations from Lithuania. Our main question today is about the role of national minority organizations in contemporary society, and what are their roles and what are their aims, and what can we do to enhance open and democratic processes in society of today. I would like to shortly introduce our guest today. We are very pleased to have with us here today the president of the Jewish community in Oslo, Ervinas Kohnas, also a historian working in South Sami Museum and Cultural Center, Håkon Hermanstrand. We also have here with us today Dovilė Rūkaitė from Jewish Litva community of Lithuania. Welcome. And the president of a Polish discussion club, Dorota Sokolovska. And I hope we will have a very interesting exchange of ideas and also experiences that each of these organizations have in their own countries, and to share and see if there is any common ground and maybe learning opportunities from each other. I would like to now ask each of the organizations to shortly introduce themselves, their main activities, and I think we can start in the same order that I introduced you already. So Ervin, please go ahead.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. I've had the project with the Lithuania once before, and in that respect, I visited Vilnius. It was a life-changing experience. It was interesting to see the remnants of at the time the most central Jewish brain, or how to say, the cradle of Jewish life in Europe at the time. So it was both interesting and a little bit sad, but it was good to see that Jews are still living there and trying to stay alive as a Jewish community, not only as individuals, because Judaism is about community. It's difficult to be Jewish all by yourself on a mountaintop. I have to correct you a little bit, Vita. We are only one national minority represented here today. Håkon represents an indigenous people. So the Sami people in Norway are not among the 5 official national minorities. They are under a different convention, and that's the Indigenous Peoples Convention. Right, Håkon? So we have 5 national minorities, and the Jews are one of them in Norway. Not so in Denmark, for instance. It's by choice. So the Convention of National Minorities is an obligation for the state to protect the national minority, the culture of the national minority. Our problem is we have to stay alive, and our objective is how to maintain a living Jewish community, so that you won't only find a Jewish community in museums, but a live one. So that means we have to have a living synagogue. So without the synagogue, if the synagogue is not alive, the community center won't be alive. So what's it about to be Jewish? 2 main objectives is important to maintain Jewish life. And on the one hand, it's our kosher kitchen, the eating prohibitions and the restrictions and commandments, and the other one is Shabbat. So if you keep the dietary laws and Shabbat you're almost home free. You're almost there. And so we, as a community, we provide for our members from before they are born until after the death. And we have to do it ourselves as a community, contrary to, for instance, a majority society like the Christian communities in Norway. They have a state that up until a couple of years ago used to be a Christian state. So everything is provided from the state side. As a minority, we have to provide all of these important stuffs in life from the community side. So this is a problem, for instance, for all the Israelis immigrating to Norway or to other countries. And there are a lot of Israelis emigrating from Israel. They have problems connecting with the local communities because they don't understand the concept of a community, because they come from a Jewish majority society, where also the state provides. So you don't have to make an effort yourself, either as an individual or as a community, to maintain Jewish life when you live in a majority society. Do you want me to go on, or is this just a short introduction?
I think at this point, it's good. We will have some time to go into depth in certain areas. So thank you very much. And we will pass the microphone to Håkon, please.
Thank you very much. Ervin, as he correctly pointed out, I represent a Sami indigenous institution, and I'm pretty privileged being an ethnic Norwegian working for a Sami institution and being asked to represent it today. So I feel a little bit not burdened, but I feel a certain responsibility. A lot of what Ervin said can be applied on the Sami community as well, and at our institution's role, because everything is based upon the Norwegian majority. So our main task, our task is to keep the South Sami society alive and going into the future, making sure that things can develop and that the cooperation across the border also runs smoothly, because the Sami, as you know, probably are in several countries, four countries: Russia, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. And we are in the South Sami area, meaning that we have there is a common language across the border in Sweden, and the same culture, same people, same families, same ancestors, and so on. So one of our responsibilities is to work across the border. Salmon Sita, where I work, was founded in 1963 as an organization or an association of Sami politicians and leaders, in order to try to develop an institution, because before that there was no institution or thought of any kind of Southern Sami institution, whereas the Norwegian majority had a lot. And it took 17 years before the building that we have at present was finished, and the organization or association grew into an institution. And after that, the main focus has been both to develop that institution and to work especially with history and archaeology and culture, and to maintain, for example, the material culture, traditional handcraft, which has been very important in order to maintain and to show and to tell an identity. And the history has been especially important because especially the Southern Samis, being around about 2,000 persons, there are no official figures, have been in a pressured situation when it comes to history and telling history, where the majority history has been pretty much without any mention of Sami presence, which has been very important for us. And we have achieved quite a lot of things in the field of history, in the field of archaeology, in the field of letting a Sami perspective being heard and seen. And now we are erecting a new building, bigger building, better building than our previous one. And even though there are things to do, we have seen a slow, I have to say, slow improvement in the Sami situation during the last decades. And I have to add, I work in a project aimed at especially doing these things called Bjarnardager, financed through the European Union Interreg funding, where we try to work with almost forgotten traits of Sami culture on the coasts of Sweden and Norway. And this thing about funding has also been a struggle because we always have to look for funding. We don't have a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Håkon. I think this experience of not having enough funding can be shared across a different field here as well in Lithuania. Yes, but I will not take much time. Dovilė, please go ahead.
Hello, it's a pleasure and honor for me to be here today in this challenging and interesting discussion. And I would like to come back to Ervin's comment, what is it to be Jew in Norway or in Lithuania? There is not much of a difference, and this community gene is the main thing that all Jews across Europe and the world are experiencing. So it's very important for Jews of Lithuania to be together, to feel this community feeling, to argue, to enjoy, to celebrate, to mourn together. So a Lithuanian Jewish Litvak community is a tiny organization, structure, or group. It is in the most optimistic numbers. We count, let's say, 5,000 members. There is no clear statistics because the numbers of census is not, we say it's not correct, and it happened some long time ago. And those 5,000 are mixed families scattered in at least 7 cities of Lithuania, scattered, but when it comes to the celebrations, traditional holidays, community joins together and connects either on social networks or live. So community connects 7 regional organizations in bigger cities and small cities. Somewhere they are in hundreds, somewhere there are in 10 people or few families. In Lithuania we have a Jewish school. It is in the capital of Lithuania, in Vilnius. There are like around 500 people, pupils studying there, and what is the goal of the organization, among other, is representing Jews to the world in the context of the country. It's of course preservation of the cultural, tangible and intangible heritage. And the small community, tiny community, has a great responsibility to tell the former glory story of Lithuanian Jews once, as Erwin told, once was never called as a minority. So we also have this open debate, either we are we should be called as a minority here in the country.
Yes, thank you, Dovilė. Very, very interesting to see the connections already can be seen here. Dorota, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad that I'm here today because I'm representing some kind of different organization, Polish Discussion Club. It's not a traditional organization, Polish organization of Lithuania, because since Polish community or minority is the largest in Lithuania as a minority after Lithuanians, there are a lot of different organizations in Lithuania. We have the Union of Poles in Lithuania. Even we have a political party which is said to represent Polish interests in the political arena, although it's not always true. But the organization of which I am the president this year, Polish Discussion Club, was established in 2014. It's some kind of young organization, and the main goal was to create a common ground, some kind of common platform for communications of Polish people in Lithuania and Lithuanians to find a solution for some problems. Erin has mentioned the Convention on National Minorities. In Lithuania, we don't have such a document which would be actively now conducted. Lithuanian Parliament this year is only drafting the document. We haven't seen it yet. So generally speaking, we face a lot of political, maybe some administrational problems together with cultural misunderstandings, historical misunderstandings, although the history of Poland and Lithuania was through the history is always connected, but now our organization has aimed to resolve some problems between Lithuanians and Polish people, and our organization gathers some intellectuals, Polish intellectuals in Lithuania, professors, active journalists, people who are interested in the life of Polish community in Lithuania, and we all share the thought that we should speak out our problems, but not keep them to ourselves, which was rather a common narrative in Lithuania. And recently, we're not only organizing discussions, which is said by our name, Polish Discussion Club, but also several years ago we have started some kind of think tanking activities for drafting some policy recommendations, some strategies, and now we're presenting the strategy for the Vilnius region, which is densely inhabited by the Poles, to Lithuanian political parties, to the government, president, etc., to resolve some very practical problems, together with enhancing the discussion, some historical topics, some cultural topics, and we work in both these directions.
Thank you, Dorota. It's interesting to see already some common themes running through your presentations. But before we continue to a more maybe open-ended discussion, I would like to ask all the listeners and viewers who are with us today, you are welcome, more than welcome, to participate in this discussion by typing in your comments in the comment section in the chat area. I see that Yusufi already did so. We will try to address them maybe at the end of the discussion, or if it fits into one of the questions that we are discussing, I will address them directly in the discussion itself. Thank you very much for your introduction. It was interesting to hear, and I think the common theme, and especially among the three first presenters was that it is very important role of the organization is to form a community and to provide for a community, as well as representing it and its interest to the broader society. Dorota's organization does that as well, but we also have a somewhat broader aim to become public opinion, to form public opinion, to be active participants in dialogue with majority society. And I would also like to ask on your experiences, and also maybe we could broaden up this area of discussion to see what other roles a national minority organization can perform besides forming and maintaining their own communities. Do you see any other important issues that national minorities could do in your society and should do? Maybe I have a very general maybe statements of what NGOs do in society, and one is representation, second publicity, and third making sensitive of the majority society to the issue that you are representing. Maybe you could build up on this, and what do you do? And especially maybe we had this question that is important in Lithuanian society about the if the culture of national minorities being considered a part of national narrative. Is your is the national minority that you represent is seen as a part of a bigger national narrative, or is it just some small group of people who maintain their own culture? And if so, maybe it's already achieved in Norway. What was the road towards this achievement? I don't know, just go ahead and mute yourself.
I can try, and I have unmuted myself. It's easy to forget. Very ambitious questions, Vita. Just to clarify also to Dorota, I'm talking about, when I said convention, I'm talking about the convention of the Council of Europe on national minorities. I'm not sure if Lithuania has ratified that convention or not, but anyway, you're probably free to do it. So Norway has ratified the convention at the end of the 1990s. I think it was in 1997. And the reason is that Norway has minorities, 5 of them, that have been in the country for more than 100 years, and which the Norwegian government views as important and valuable to the Norwegian society. And it's important and valuable for the Norwegian society to maintain these minorities as living minorities, not only to put them into museums. And of course, it's because they can contribute, and it makes the Norwegian society richer. And I believe it's so. I believe that a society which is heterogeneous is a richer, more productive, more creative society than a solely homogeneous society. Anyway, our history is not too long. I have 6 dates for you to say something about the Jewish history in Norway, and it starts with 1814, when all Jews were expelled from Norway. It wasn't a big thing because there were no Jews in Norway. And in 1814, Norway got its first constitution. Still, Norway was under Sweden. Norway was traded and lost in a war with Napoleon. So we were 400 years, we were under Denmark, and then we were given to Sweden. But in 1814, we also got our own constitution. So what we had together with the Swedes, there was a common king, and the common foreign ministry and common foreign embassies. Else we established self-rule in Norway, and in that very liberal constitution, they put in paragraph 2 that Jews were not welcome to live in Norway. This paragraph was amended for first time in 1851. So it took some years and 3 trials to get this opened up. Norway was not flooded with Jews, as many proponents warned, but the first Jews who came, or the second first, most of them came from Lithuania. Most of them came running away from Tsar Russia, and the Jewish community was established in 1892. So it took some time. First, we had to buy a cemetery, and then we established the Jewish community. And the sole purpose of establishing the Jewish community was to get enough money together to hire a teacher. And this is the core, most important thing. That's why I was happy to hear that you told me you have a Jewish school with a sizable number of pupils. So teaching our youngsters is the sole most important thing for our community. Then in 1920, we built our synagogue, or we inaugurated our present synagogue, which survived the war, and we are currently planning for the celebrations of our synagogue's 100th year anniversary, which is remarkable. Huffington Post has named the synagogue of Oslo among the 50 most interesting synagogues in the world. So we're happy with that. You can find that online, of course. And because of the corona, our celebrations last year were postponed, so we'll try to do this this year. The second, yes, and then we have a date called 1930. In 1930, we got a very anti-Semitic legislation forbidding us to slaughter animals according to Jewish law. Shchita, it's called in Hebrew. And it's still in effect. So we have 3 countries in the world that forbids shechting or shchita. That's Switzerland, Norway, and Sweden, which has made it difficult for us to find kosher food all over. So we have to import it. And today it's not so difficult to import kosher meat, but still we have. So we have only frozen meats. This is the last piece of anti-Semitic legislation that we have. And the last date I wanted to mention is 1942. The ban on Jews in Norway were reintroduced under the Nazi occupation, and at the end of 1942, Norway was again Judenrein, free for Jews. Half of the Jewish community managed to escape to Sweden, and the other half was deported, and almost all of them murdered in Auschwitz. In 1945, those who, most of them who had escaped to Sweden came back, and that was not a given. So we found minutes from a board meeting they held in Stockholm at the end of 1944, where they actually discussed whether or not to go back to Norway, Oslo and Trondheim. That's the 2 Jewish communities we have in Norway. And would it be possible to rebuild? So they made the decision to do so, but it wasn't a given. So it was a revelation for me to find that document just a year ago, to see that they actually discussed whether or not to come back to Norway. So it was good they came back and rebuilt the community, and we still stand on the shoulders of those who came before me and did the hard work. But it's interesting, you said that you're a small community of 5,000 people. We are an even smaller community in the Jewish community in Oslo. We have only 772 members. And altogether in Norway, there is a number between 1,300 and 1,500 Jews altogether. It's not so easy to, so 1,000 are affiliated with one of the two communities. And so I have to stipulate how many are unaffiliated, which is difficult. So I stipulate somewhere between 300 and 500 unaffiliated Jews in Norway. So altogether, a very, very small number. To answer your question, we have this problem between assimilation and integration, and not everyone understands the difference. But the difference is explained easily is that if you are assimilated, you obliterate your own identity and you just take upon yourself the majority society's identity, and you distinguish your own. If you are integrated, you are a part of society in all ways, but you maintain your identity, your minority identity. In my case, your Jewish identity. So we have all different kinds of Norwegians, and it's one of our tasks to educate and influence and take part in the public debates on all issues. This is one of the issues I partake in, and for instance, I'm born in Budapest in Hungary, so I have a double hyphen. So I'm a double hyphen Norwegian. I'm a Hungarian Jewish Norwegian, and I think the greater Norwegian society starts to understand that we are getting more multicultural, but not in a bad way. It's in a good way. It's richer. I like to use the surveys done by McKinsey. McKinsey is one of the most famous American consulting businesses in the world, and they do surveys. They have done 3 now. These surveys show that a pluralistic organization is more profitable than a homogeneous organization. So they have done these surveys among 360 international corporations, and they show that the organizations that have a pluralistic leadership, which is management and board of directors, are 35% more profitable if they are diverse, multi-ethnically diverse. And if they are diversity on gender, they are 15% more profitable. So we do have figures showing that a plural society, a diverse society, is a more profitable, more productive, more creative society than a purely homogeneous and not diverse society.
Thank you, Ervin. I think you touched upon very, very important things about what does it mean to be a contemporary society and how to prepare to be a pluralistic society facing all these new migration and globalization challenges. And in order to truly be open society, I think it is important to face the historical truth, actually, to learn and deal with your own communities that you already have, and not just to look at the future of what's to come. So thank you. On this note, I would like to, maybe Håkon, would you like to continue? maybe just to respond to her.
I think, thank you. I think Ervin touched upon a lot of good points and elaborated it very well. And I think one of the main issues for our institution and for the Sami people is to manage to stay Sami within the Norwegian and Swedish society, and that is one of the challenges. And as Ervin said quite early, the Sami are an indigenous population with a special status since the Norwegian constitution was amended with a paragraph protecting the Sami and with the Sami parliament being actually a political body that can speak on behalf of the Sami people. There is a parliament in Norway, there is one in Sweden, there is one in Finland, and that makes our job in our institution a little bit more different, since there is now a political body that can speak on behalf of the Sami population. And we are free of that role, so to speak, but we still have to front and to talk for issues that are particular to our region. And one of the issues that we see as very important is the question of land and resources, which is quite, seen from a Sami perspective, alarming, and where maybe it's one of the more difficult questions to solve between the majority and the minority, the indigenous population. And Ervin spoke about the Norwegian constitution and laid it out quite clearly. The Sami being an indigenous population, being there for time, from the beginning of times, and being divided by state borders, created a special situation. But still, we still feel in our institution the aftermath of this Norwegian national project, because there hasn't been historically, as Ervin showed us, a great opening for a heterogeneous society up to, but Second World War changed that, I believe. But still, we are struggling with the effects of a very wanted assimilation policy at the end of the 1800s, in the first half of the 1900s. And it is actually, I have never thought of it that way until Ervin mentioned it. But one of the things that was on the agenda for Sami politicians in the 1920s was their own school, which is, and Ervin put that a little bit in perspective. I haven't thought of it that way before, but that was something to think of. And at Snåsa, where my institution is, our neighbor is the Sami school, a boarding school for the Sami minority, Sami indigenous population in southern Norway. And the reason why it exists along with its another school is the fact that the community feels that this is needed. And in the end of it, to the language, which you probably know, is severely threatened, the South Sami language. There are no official numbers, but if there are, as a total number, 2,000 roundabout South Samis and about 500 fluent speakers of the language. And as a historian, when it comes to national narrative, I don't think really that there is a good answer to this question of being visible. But yes, in a way, but in another way, not at all. Having been a teacher for many years, I have seen that in schools, the national minorities and the Samis are not yet completely integrated in books and teachings. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you touched upon, both of you touched upon very important steps, actually, how to be part of a national narrative or how to be part of a broader culture. And one is legal recognition, or being recognized as indigenous or as a national minority in legal acts. I think it is still an issue, or an unresolved issue in Lithuania, as we do not have any law on national minorities or actual definition of what a national minority is, and there is no agreement on this definition yet. So it's part of this part has not been resolved in Lithuania yet. And I think also what you mentioned, the importance of community institutions like schools or religious institutions for the community is very important. And I think maybe Dorota will address the importance of schools for Polish community in Lithuania. Or I don't know, Dovilė also, if you see the material heritage and all the how the Jewish community functions in Lithuania now, and language as well. Although our communities are somewhat bigger here today than what you represent in Norway, but I think the language issue is also important. So I welcome Dovilė, maybe your take on the view in Lithuania.
Thank you. It's very, very interesting. And in opposite, it's obvious that it is impossible neither tell history of Lithuanian Jews in 6 days or in 6 years or even in 6 hours with 6 presenters. It's so enormously rich. It started many hundreds years ago. And maybe you heard Lithuania is called the Northern Jerusalem of the Europe. Last year we celebrated 300 years anniversary of Great Gaon. And now you can hear Yiddish, old Jewish language, spoken more in the streets of Israel, Jerusalem, than here. And here it was a cradle of Jewish culture, Jewish Yiddish culture and Yiddish institutes, schools, synagogues, etc. And out of hundreds and hundreds synagogues, we only have one functioning. So community has functioning synagogue. We have rabbis. The community is diverse. Not all those 1,000 members are religious. They are not anymore. We have only few places, only few kosher places. So we don't have even shahid, the person who performs the slaughter. We import the meat. We import the chicken from other countries, other Jewish communities. So it's nothing left from the former glory, but we are fighting to be visible, and it's not the sad story. Lithuanian Jews celebrated also the Year of Jewish Culture last year, next to the anniversary of Gaon. Jewish culture was daily news. Every little town was talking about Jews in their in their own cities. Up till today, each day we can read or view the documentaries on Lithuanian Jews. And this is a new production, contemporary production. So the interest towards the community life and culture is growing, and this is not like a personal opinion. I I administrate the social networks of our community and our news portal. So it's a huge flow of things that happening even during the COVID time. But I would like to share something that we can tell based on the certain researches. So in 2018, we finalized the research, which part of the expert group, Vita, was as well. You are, among other things, you are a great expert in Roma issues. So Jewish and Roma communities joined their forces and prepared recommendations on the action how to fight anti-Semitic and Romophobic issues in the public field. So among others, it was great aspiration of Jewish community to change the memory of culture, of Jewish culture. Shortly, it's to create a tolerant society that accepts a lost Jewish population as part of the Lithuanian society. It should be a common loss. And then it will be so much easier to talk about the sensitive issues of Nazi collaboration, of the loss of 200,000 of Jews in Lithuania. And it would be so much easier if the public opinion in Lithuania would change the narrative, stop rewriting the history, stop hiding the uncomfortable aspects of the history, and start talking as the lost was the common. And this suggests us to continue with education programs and let's say apply a holistic approach towards the teaching of the Holocaust. Those recommendations also revealed that focus is on education and education of young generation. We have to be in partners with this Ministry of Education here in Lithuania. We have to teach grown-ups. We have to cooperate with all informal institutions. So the issue of Jewish culture and lost culture should be visible. And that was like the mainstream line of this document. And here today, I can happily share that Jewish community is not passive. We produce those recommendations, but we also take an active role implementing them. And it's symbolic. This discussion is under auspices of a so-called Norwegian program, Norwegian support, back to 2013. I remember we proved and prepared the symbol of the first human rights project for our community called Bagel Shop. Ervin was a very important partner in this project. And guess what? This is most sustainable project. Today is a very symbolic day. Our president, our cheerleader of the community is busy with the reopening of this bagel shop. It was remodeled and opened today, and I think after this discussion we can see the picture on the social networks, how it looks today. And this was how we started 7 years ago. We said the bagel shop, the kosher cafeteria will bake bagels the bagels, the white bread cookies that once was born in common Lithuanian and Poland country. Then they left over the ocean, and 5 years ago they are back in Lithuania. And this is the open place where we invite everybody, different color, different religion, different, you name it. And we enjoy Jewish food together. That's how we know how to do it the best. And that was our first very, very, let's say, strong step to the public of Lithuania. And we still bake bagels and talk about human rights. This is our approach.
Yes, I really commend both the bagel shop. It has great bagels in Vilnius. I welcome you all to join, and also the approach of publicity and being open to the public. It's really a very nice tip. I know that Ervin wants to shortly respond to Dovilė, and then
yeah, well, I want to say a few words about this acknowledging. It's very relevant these days when we just commemorated the genocide of the Armenian people, and it's an issue, of course, worldwide. And the Turks refused to recognize that the genocide on the Armenians was a genocide, and so they have lived a life for so many years, and they have raised a couple of generations on these lies. And that's very bad for the Turkish society. So connecting this to the Norwegian society, Norway has done atrocities to the Sami people, which you wouldn't believe, suppressed their culture as well as they could to assimilate them, forbidden them to speak their own languages in school, and force them to speak Norwegian and abandon their language practically. That's why Håkon tells about like 50% of the South Sami population speaking their own language. And this is one of the main struggles in all the Sami communities. We have another national minority, the travelers, which is, yeah, you know, the travelers. What Norway has done to the travelers for 400 years, you wouldn't believe it. For the first 100 years, from the 1643 to the mid-1700s, we hunted them. So there was a target price on their heads, and officially there were twice a year they arranged hunts on travelers, where they on one of these hunts could kill up to 150 of them. We took away their children, we lobotomized them, we sterilized them, we did all sorts of things to them to get rid of them or to assimilate them into our society, so they would stop traveling around, which is their culture, and we tried to teach them how to live as ordinary Norwegians in normal housings, getting up in the morning and eating with a fork and a knife. So to do that, we put them into 2 concentration camps. We had one concentration camp in the north and one up north and northwest part of Norway. And why did they let themselves be put into concentration camps? Because of the threat of taking away their children. So, but this is not the worst. The worst thing that the Norwegian society did to the travelers was forbidding them by law to own horses. And this is so infamous. It's aggravates me so much. It's such a terrible stain on the Norwegian society that we enforced legislation with owning horses. The horse was the core of the travelers' culture, because they used the horse, of course, in front of the wagon to get around, and they over the years developed a competence on horses. So on every marketplace where they bought and sold stuff and horses, the travelers were the professionals. And the most terrible about this was when the legislation came to be. And you wouldn't guess, and you won't believe it, it was in 1953, after the Second World War, in the present democratic Norway, we found it smart to forbid the travelers to own horses. It's a very tiny minority, and the legislation was lifted in 1974. It's terrible atrocities which the Norwegian government, the Norwegian parliament has acknowledged, made restitution. But the important thing is to acknowledge the history, acknowledge the facts, because then you can mend the society. If you live a lie, you will never be able to mend. The other thing I wanted to say is the difference between a tolerant society and a pluralistic society. So we have to go from being tolerant to becoming pluralistic. A tolerant society accepts the other. We don't like them, but we accept them, we tolerate them. But to be a pluralistic society is more challenging, because a pluralist has to see the value of the other's culture. There must be something good in it, and you have to acknowledge what that is in order to become a pluralistic society, not just to tolerate. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's very, very, very important points, and I think what we touched upon is this how you call the nationalistic project of both Norwegian and Lithuanian society that we had also, and how to face this history of this nationalistic project, what didn't imply and what it did to the minority communities in the countries, and also not only to look at it as a history itself and something what loss it caused for the society as a whole, but it wasn't just a loss of certain minorities, but it was a loss of the whole society of this project, but also the impetus or the choices that people do today still on this nationalistic project, and how it affects our society today, and especially minorities today. But I want to give floor to Dorota, who was patiently waiting for her.
Thank you. I could continue on this, both the nationalistic project and some narrative wars, which are especially relevant for us in Lithuania. I could start with this conception of two Lithuanias, and in Lithuania in general, there is a very high score of inequality between the main city, Vilnius, and the regions, but also there is kind of historical difference. We had a conception, the concept of Lithuania of Kaunas. Kaunas is the second biggest city in Lithuania. Now it's very Lithuanian. It doesn't have that much of minorities as Vilnius, the capital city, but this concept of Kaunas said basically that Lithuania should be very ethnical Lithuanian. We speak Lithuanian, our history is based on the history of Lithuanian nation, and as nowadays democratic society, we are Lithuanian society, and the Lithuanian language is the primary one, Lithuanian education is the primary one, and so on. And also we had some kind of forgotten project of Lithuania Vilnius, which was kind of popular in the interwar period, shared by some intellectuals, both Lithuanian and Polish, and of course Russian ones. This project said about that Lithuania should be diverse, should be multi-ethnical, and it should be Lithuania of that commonwealth of Poland and Lithuania, which was presented as one of the most tolerant countries at that time, and so on. And basically now we're still going along with this first project of Lithuania of Kaunas, ethnically Lithuanian country, which, as Vita has mentioned, we hasn't recognized ethnic minorities yet. We don't have a law on minorities, although we have ratified the Convention of Protection of National Minorities, so it's kind of dichotomy in Lithuanian law. And this kind of theoretical debate on which way to choose is in fact affecting the way we live and the way the community is living, the way the minority sees majority and the majority sees minority. And we can see it on the example of Polish schools in Lithuania. We have a very large network of Polish schools in Lithuania, something around 40 or 50, not only in Vilnius, but in smaller cities. And it's a very big achievement for the Polish community, because in Lithuania you can start education in Polish from the kindergarten and even study in the Polish university in Vilnius, which is a part of Polish university in Poland, in Białystok. But the question is of the quality of this education, because as our research has showed, as club, we have found out that on average, Polish pupils in Polish schools, they do worse than pupils in Russian or Lithuanian schools. And the average score is worse because of the kind of low qualifications of the teachers and the lack of appropriate education for the exams. We have this gap when we learn in Polish, and then in 10th grade we start learning in Lithuanian, and some language-related problems arise. And now we understand that the preservation of Polish school, especially in the smaller cities, is very important, because the school is the heart of the community. It's the only institution where everybody speaks Polish without some problems. Everybody shares the same culture, but the issue is now to help the pupils not to assimilate with the majority, but to integrate with it, to be a good one, to be a good worker on the when you leave the school, to enter the higher schools. Because of this, that Polish pupils, they get worse results on the state exams. They do not get to the universities, and they don't have this competence of the modern world. Although we speak Polish and Lithuanian, and majority of Polish people in Lithuania, they speak Russian. We have these 3 languages. There is a problem of the quality of knowing this language, because we do not speak this very grammatically correct Polish. It's rather a mixture of languages, which is very nice, very historical, traditional. But when you're at work, you have to separate them, and so on. And we have one city very interesting in its history and culture, Šalčininkai, near the border with Belarus. And there is Lithuanian school and the Polish one. And pupils during the lectures, they speak and they hear Polish or Lithuanian, but then they exit the school, they all speak Russian with some kind of Belarusian elements. And this is also very phenomenon, very large phenomenon of Russian culture influence on the Polish one, but not that of Pushkin or some kind of Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, but that of pop culture, pop media, some kind of disinformation. And it gives a way for Lithuanians to see Polish people in Lithuania as a threat for their security because of the relations of Lithuania and Russia. So, and these questions, these problems, they are still unresolved and even unaddressed, because it's not always very comfortable for Lithuanian politicians to start these debates. But although they should be started, because they talk about the relations between majority and minority, but also it kind of endangers the way the minority lives. okay, we have a lot of schools and so on. We have a lot of organizations, communities, dance or songs collectives, but we still don't see the point of this being Polish if you cannot get to the highest school, you cannot be educated, you cannot climb this social ladder, something like that. And these are the main problems we are now addressing. And I personally believe that this narrative of ethnically Lithuanian country, ethnically Lithuanian Lithuania, it gives a negative impact on this integration between Lithuanians and Polish people, because neither of them wants to speak, neither of them wants to resolve the problems, and we can see it on this, that we cannot ratify the law on minorities, we cannot resolve the problems in Polish people education, and so on. I see that Håkon wants to comment on my comment, so I give the floor. I have said everything I wanted to.
Thank you, Dorota. It's wonderful, and we will turn to Håkon soon. I just want to also address one of the comments that we have from our viewers. Maybe you could describe the situation of Lithuanian Poles regarding assimilation or integration. Do you face these issues, and how is this coexistence of the Polish and the Lithuanian group? And afterwards, we will go to Håkon.
Okay, yes, of course, I can do it. We see from the statistics that the number of Polish people in Lithuania, it is getting smaller with each year, with each census, and this year we will get the newest results. But in fact, this happens because of two problems. One of them is just emigration. Lithuanians emigrate, Polish people emigrate, but the second one is assimilation. And of course, the part of it is the mixed marriages topic, that when there is a new family established, it's more often that children go to the Lithuanian school than the Polish one. But it's not only about the love between the people, but also about it that if you want to get better education, you go to Lithuanian school and you naturally find yourself being in the Lithuanian community, Lithuanian language, Lithuanian, you have Lithuanian friends and so on, and your bonds with your community, they get weaker. So it's hard to say some kind of numeric representation of this assimilation. It's hard to say how many people are assimilated, but I would say that assimilation is more often, happens more often than the integration, because when you want to be prosperous, I don't know, I have mentioned education, but also some kind of culture, because sometimes Lithuanian English or even Russian culture, they are seen as more prestigious than Polish one. And we have conducted a research which showed that Polish language, although people say that Polish language is their native language, they say that it's not prestigious. It doesn't seem prestigious for them, and they rather choose Lithuanian or Russian. Younger people choose English, but Polish culture is not seen as something valuable. So naturally, because of it, people tend to assimilate and to choose the brighter side of the option, and they go either to Lithuanian school or just transfer their interests. Even sometimes they don't want to publicly state that they are Polish. They do not talk about the family, and there are of course positive examples, but there's a very big difference, because between the, I would say, academical sphere, academic society, when everybody can say that I'm Polish or I'm Russian or something like that, and they won't be discriminated because of it, but there's a broad unknown part of society just living the life, And here some problems arise, not in the biggest cities, I would say, but in some smaller ones.
Thank you. Before turning to Håkon, and I will give you the floor in a minute, I just want to maybe thank you for just and also to be surprised also how big of an issues you raise and what are the challenges, and also I don't know how the problems that you see in contemporary society are really, really important. And also when you talk about the variety of issues from, you know, maintaining your own community, fighting assimilation, fighting with, not fighting, but maybe discussing and trying to engage with a different idea of community rather than this nationalistic project, and to see what are the opportunities of pluralistic society, to save your heritage, to work with history. I always am surprised and also proud of you doing all this important work, especially taking into account the size of your communities often, and being so visible and so present in the most important debates. Also, just because we already we're moving towards the end of our discussion, I would also like to just to follow up also, and I will open the floor to discussion. But my very last question is about the partnerships that you could form, maybe, or the ways of how you see, how could you strengthen your, I don't know, fight, but your aims or your projects, finding partnership with majority society or with different minority organizations. What prospects do you see in this area? But also just be invited to respond to the previous comments, and let's have an open discussion for the last 15 minutes. So Håkon, please.
Thank you. There are a lot of things to comment upon, both from Dovilė and Dorota and Ervin, and I can't possibly manage all of it, but I think it's very important I think both Dovilė and Ervin spoke about is the thing that you have to recognize things that has happened, and you have to speak of things that are difficult. And seen from my point of view, personal point of view, belonging to the majority, it can be a difficult exercise sometimes, because things, you have to shift perspective. When you are used to have a majority perspective, you have to do some cognitive work there. But I think that's very important. It's very important to talk about history, for example, with truthfulness, even though it's difficult, and to listen for the majority, to listen to the minority, to see how this has been from their point of view, and what there is to tell from that angle. That's very important. If as Evan said, we're going to mend something, if we are going to proceed as a society. And I also think what was said about difference between a tolerant and a pluralistic society was interesting, because I think we see that when Sami speak up, for example, over land issues, and in other and the access to resources, which can very often become quite emotional from the majority point of view, really too, because there is then a lot of actually hate speech comes to the surface. And just recently, the city of Trondheim, town of Trondheim, and a neighboring town, Steinkjer, started a process of getting up signs for the cities with a Sami name together with a Norwegian name, and that provoked a lot. So I mean, it shows the difference between tolerance and a pluralistic society, where if it were pluralistic, it would have been a problem, I believe. Also, what Dorota mentioned about the story about these children being influenced by Russian reminds me of the situation of another national minority in Norway, the Kvenes, the Finnish, to simplify it, the Finnish-speaking minority of Norway, that was seen as a security threat to Norwegian security between the wars because of their connection, among other things, to Russia. So that's an interesting parallel. And when it comes to partnership, I think this conversation here has shown us that there are a lot of things to be partners about, because it seems to me that indigenous or national minority, it seems a lot of things are similar, and also and projects and experiences have been carried out that can be translated into different contexts. So I think that's a very promising thing. And our experience at Salmon Sete is that it is quite easy to go into a fruitful partnership with majority society, majority museums, schools, official bodies, etc., etc. The interest is and the willingness, positive willingness to develop society further is, I think, promising. The thing for us is that we want to keep the Sami perspective. We, for example, would like, let's say, another college, university to come to us first to discuss a project plan, instead of coming to us in the end to present the plan, for example. So a few such things that, but in the overall picture, I think it's quite positive when it comes to going into partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Erwin. Very, Håkon, I'm sorry. Very, very important points. Does any of you want to continue? Yes, Erwin, yes, please.
Of course. I mean, different heads thinking together and cooperating makes you stronger, and the results are better. And we can both cross communicate and cross cooperate with almost anyone and gain from it. I mean, the Sami people is recognized as an indigenous people in Norway under the ILO convention. They're not in Sweden. In Sweden, the Sami people are one of the national minorities. So I mean, it's different from country to country, but the problems seem strangely very the same. So I mean, for instance, I've been astonished over the level of hate towards the Sami population in the northern part of Norway. You know, Norway is a very long country, and what happens up north, I mean, people down south, they know almost nothing about it. For instance, the hate against the Sami people locally up there. I mean, Håkon is down south. I mean, the Sami people have, I don't know, like 5 different languages only in Norway. So it's, I mean, they're also a diverse minority. But anyway, they're in a different, they have different problems. I mean, okay, they have the same problems of the pressure on assimilation, but then they have these land issues that other minorities don't have, for instance. But also the situation is better today because of the Sami parliament. So I mean, they have a structure which is useful and gives empowerment, which other minorities don't have, for instance. So, but of course we can learn from each other and cross countries and also among ourselves in our countries. But I have a question of Dorota. You didn't mention anything about religion. I mean, the Polish minority in Lithuania is what, like 6% or something. But you have Catholic churches, no?
Yeah, Polish people are Catholic, and in fact they are more religious than Lithuanians, and the church is often also one of the most important parts of the being Polish, but there not many problems arise, because differently maybe from your examples, Lithuanians and Polish people, they were always Catholic together. Like they shared the religion, they didn't share the same culture or language or even place of inhabitants, but they always shared religion. Nowadays, of course, both Lithuanians and Polish people, they tend to be less religious, but still Polish community is very closely connected with the church. Of course, in regions, in smaller cities, it is often church is often connected with some political problems. It is politicized, both by Lithuanian parties and Polish parties. You can hear the priest saying that this party is good and this party is bad. Yes, in Vilnius region, maybe it's more like Polish propaganda. In Lithuania, it can be Lithuanian propaganda, same as with schools. So, but it's much less than in schools, because schools, both Polish ones and Lithuanian ones, if they're not in the big cities, they are politicized. So, so here some problems just with political correctness, some kind of, and with the law arise.
Okay, Ervin, do you still want to continue, or should we give the floor to about the partnerships maybe, or you already maybe?
No, I don't have anything pressuring. I have one issue that we haven't talked about, addressed explicitly, and it's the issue of threats. As a minority, what threats do we see as a minority in Norway? And I divide those into two, external threats and internal threats. Internal threats are mainly exemplified by mixed marriages, which Dorota has touched upon. So mixed marriages is one of the threats that we have identified and addressed. And then we have external threats on the one side in, for instance, legislation, and on the other hand, anti-Semitism. So we have both. I mentioned the legislation that forbids kosher slaughtering. This is one. But on the other side, we have a new law which came into being in January 2015 that protects our right to Brit Milah. Brit Milah is the male circumcision thing that we do on our boys. Of course, male circumcision on boys, that's good. So this law puts Norway in a unique situation as a light among the nations. So this is an existential question for a Jewish community, not for each individual Jew, but for organized Jewish life. As a Jewish community, it's an existential question. So since 2015, we have legislation protecting our right to Brit Milah. So we don't have all these stupid discussions from one year to another. So now I took on several issues.
Ervin, yes, it's a broad discussion. I think we could discuss for 5 hours at least, but we only have 5 minutes left. I still want to give the floor to Dovilė. And
yes, in line with this discussion about the threats, the major threat for our community is because we are so small, tiny, and there are no Jews, this is our daily joke. Where are the Jews? Everybody moves either for good or for business or for economical or family reunion reasons. So a Jewish population in Lithuania is not growing. So idea for the projects with other European Jewish communities has a very, very clear purpose to grow and marry in between. But this is the optimistic joke or half reality. And I would like to share, because the question was about the partnerships. Our community has a fabulous example. We work together with the Roma community. And it's not only because we share the common Holocaust issues, it's also because we can teach them and they can teach us. And in this case, majority group of Lithuania is our target group. And the voice of our minorities, if we joined together, it's much more stronger and more visible. And the main method or the strategy would be maybe to raise the curiosity towards the culture that lives next door.
Thank you, Dovilė. Thank you. I just want to give the floor to Dorota before we wrap up our discussion. Thank you.
I'll try to briefly speak about the partnership in our case. We see and we try to start some kind of partnership with especially Russian community, because when we have published our strategy for the Vilnius region and our view of national minority schools in Lithuania, we have achieved some comments from Russian community, but we haven't included them. The problem is that the Russian community in Lithuania is very fragmented because they don't want to touch upon political questions for obvious reasons. They are left with culture and history and language. For us, it's more relevant to try to resolve political questions, because without them, Håkon has mentioned the double names of the street in both languages. This is very relevant topic and very hot topic in Lithuania, because in some cities we also want to have this by names of the streets in two languages, either Lithuanian Polish or Lithuanian and Russian. It is now a political question, and after receiving these comments, we now started some conversations and debates with the Russian community. But it's as I have mentioned, there are some problems of some kind of the objectives of the organizations, and some external threats and some external reasons. They can be the problem to establish a partnership, but we try to sort it out.
Thank you. We have 1 minute left, and I want to thank you all for this participation. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think we have so many things to share still. So maybe some partnerships will continue beyond this discussion. I want to thank you for being active agents in your communities, and to continue to do so, because as Håkon said, maintaining the minorities perspective is very important, and to make it visible and to make it heard, and to because it enriches society. And also responding to Yusufi's comment, the last one, I think it's very important among the very many tasks that the national minority organizations have in the society. It's also to help build this pluralistic society and to respond to the challenges of global society, of societies becoming more diverse, and to help be more welcoming societies in this task. I am also happy that we had representatives in this discussion, not only from minority communities, but also from majority people. So there are partnerships being formed already, and I hope that it can continue this way. So good luck with your work, and all the best in what you do. And thank you for this discussion. Bye.